My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. The 18th-century English poet Thomas Gray wrote, "Where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise." This is an adaptation of the old proverb, "What you don't know can't hurt you." My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Robert Thurman, says that when it comes to the teachings of the Buddha, wisdom is bliss. Robert Thurman, the preeminent scholar and interpreter of Tibetan Buddhist philosophy for the modern world, leads us on a joyful exploration into the nature of reality through Buddha's threefold curriculum of super education. Robert Thurman was professor of Indo-Tibetan Studies at Columbia University, as well as co-founder and president of Tibet House U.S. Menla in service of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and the people of Tibet. A close friend of the Dalai Lama for more than 50 years, he's a leading worldwide lecturer on Tibetan Buddhism, passionate activist for the plight of the Tibetan people, skilled translator of Buddhist texts, and inspiring writer of popular Buddhist books. His website is bobthurman.com, and he joins me this week to share his latest book, Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly, fun facts that can change your life. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Robert Thurman. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, hi, Victor. How are you? Very nice to be with you and your friends.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know that yesterday was your 80th birthday. On behalf of our listeners and OMTimes, a belated happy birthday.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It was a great day. We had a wonderful party at our Menla mountain retreat and spa. And also my book, Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly, fun facts that can change your life, came out after too long a time. And so I'm very happy that it's doing it because, of course, the purpose of the book is to cheer people up. And so why not do that at 80?
Absolutely. You've been friends with His Holiness the Dalai Lama for more than 50 years and have an agreement that both of you will stay alive until 2048. By my calculations, that would mean you will be 107 and he will be 113. What are your planned secrets for this longevity?
Well, I'm just trying to be healthy and be happy and be helpful to others, as that helps one's happiness and longevity, as well as helping others' happiness and longevity. And but in a way, it's a kind of joke that we have, although in his case it's more serious because the Tibetan people are praying for him to live forever. So 113 years is really minor thing, and it got to where he then sort of requested me or even ordered me to stay as long as he does, because I, a little bit in a sort of happy conversation somewhere with some other people, I pinned him to the fact that there is a prophecy that he can live that long. And I was fed up with all these things you see in the media about how this is the last Dalai Lama, and maybe he will be gone soon. And the Chinese communists are often praying that he will be gone really soon, since they themselves unnecessarily have made him an embarrassment to them by being mean to him and his people, and instead of enjoying him and letting his people enjoy him, which is what they should be doing, and they will eventually. And so I just said that he had that prophecy, and even 120 he had that prophecy. So then he reluctantly kind of agreed, well, he would do his best to stay that longer time. And he has assured the Tibetan people, who are constantly having long rituals with thousands of people showing up, doing things to pray for him to live a long time. And he likes to tell them, well, don't worry, I'll stay till 113, or sometimes he says 103, or sometimes he says 110, to sort of calm them down about their worry about him possibly leaving, and calm us all down, because we do love him, and we consider his presence on the planet to be a real boon, and we hate to see him go. So on the other hand, the great thing about someone like that, who is what we think of in Buddhism as a conscious reincarnation, they always come back, so you don't lose them, even they do go and get into a better body, you could call it a kind of easy way of rejuvenating. It's get a new body from a nice mom.
And my prayers, and I'm certain the prayers of all of our listeners, is that both of you achieve that wonderful goal of longevity because of the gifts that both of you bring to our world. So thank you.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you.
Let's start by sharing with our listeners your path and how it led to this wonderful body of work and teaching that you share with our world.
I'm not enlightened myself, and I'm not fully enlightened. Let's say maybe I'm a little enlightened after 60 years of trying to learn to listen to my wife and listen to my teachers. Maybe a little bit enlightened, and but not perfectly. But anyway, the thing is that the teachings that I have been inspired by, and that I've managed to get a little bit of enlightenment from, are the teachings of the ancient enlightened beings, some of them Buddhist and some of them from other traditions, and not all of them necessarily Buddhist. And those teachings are teachings especially about wisdom, love, and compassion, and how that is actually something that can be realized in the world, and not to give in to despair and all of the seeming difficulties on the surface of the world, and realize that the amount of goodness in the world is greater than those things, and the arc, to use Martin Luther King's diction, the arc of the world is toward happiness, and justice, of course, is part of getting happiness, and compassion and love. And that is actually the reality of the world. The reality of the world is not nothing, as some materialists would have us believe that the spiritual reality of the world is nothing. And the reality of the world is not misery, it's not hell, it's not suffering. That's just a strategy that some of the religions have used to get people to try to behave, be responsible for their actions and try to do good. And the compassionate beings are more powerful in the world. And even if you don't necessarily believe in a monotheistic, omnipotent deity, the power of the universe itself, the energies of the universe, you could say, have been discovered by many scientists in the East and some in the West, that they are basically benevolent and they are supportive of life. In fact, they are a life energy. And that's how we do live, and so on. And so that's the kind of thing I have tried to transmit, as well as try to remind myself of it when I get discouraged and I get unhappy myself.
The title of your new book, Wisdom is Bliss, contradicts the words of 18th-century English poet Thomas Gray, who said, "Where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise." How did you choose this title?
Well, thank you so much. I was looking for the source of that ignorance is bliss statement, which is kind of like an aphorism that everybody repeats. And, they even tell the traffic cop when they're caught speeding, well, I didn't know it was that speed limit here. I was blissfully driving too fast. And they hope that they'll be forgiven. And, of course, unfortunately, they are not. Well, I understand what he's saying, and, in some cases, it might be a good idea. Sometimes, for example, people will use the factual reality about some situation as a bludgeon, and sort of hit people over the head with something that when they know that they're not receptive to it and it will only make them unhappy, and they will persist more in whatever negative thing they're doing. And in that case, it's better than remain ignorant of some kind of truth that someone throws at you. although in the long run, it's better to know all the truths. And in that sense, well, the idea of what that comes from, I believe, is the type of culture that we've been afflicted with also in the East and not only in the West. And, what I call an authoritarian culture, where the authorities, high priest and high king, political authority and spiritual authority, tend to frighten the people in the culture that reality is very dangerous, nature red in tooth and claw, the famous, I think, Longfellow phrase. And so that they need the protection of those authorities. And so the idea is to terrorize your population to be willing to obey you, and that you have a better idea how they can be protected, because reality is very dangerous. So in that sense, don't bother to know, we know, and we'll take care of you, sort of thing. That's a strategy of authorities. And but the Buddha's revolution in India in the ancient time, and the whole tradition, which basically I consider an educational tradition more than a religious one, a little bit differently than some other teachers, and that whole tradition has got along with all the different religions in the different countries where it's been of service, by helping people, individuals at least, to break out of that being terrorized, that reality is dangerous and something you don't want to know what it is, by encouraging them about his discovery that reality is nirvana, a freedom from suffering. Reality is freedom. Reality is the goodwill of the universe, of the deities in the universe, of the other beings in the universe, fundamentally goodwill. Even a tiger that might eat you doesn't hate you. and they will try to put you out of your misery quickly, and they're just driven by evolutionary imperfection, that they don't know how to go and eat tofu and make tofu, and so they have to eat some animal that they see there, and they don't hate you, and they love their puppies and their cubs and their mates and so on, and they're stuck in a negative thing where they can be dangerous to someone else. But and then when you die, there's pain, and that's bad. But then you can be in a new life, and you can be in a better life. And if you've died in a painful manner, you may choose a life that will not inflict such pain on other beings. So in the long run, which is eternal, because we're all here forever, according to Buddha's discovery, we can be a kind of being that is completely happy by being really well attuned to the life force. And we can have the ability also to make all of those that we love happy. And when we're really attuned to the life force, we will be loving of all other beings. We will not hate anyone, even though sometimes we recognize we will try to help them not be harmful to themselves or to others. So it doesn't mean we will be just asking everybody to devour us. It means we will be able to be of greatest benefit to every being. And because we're so happy living or dying and being reborn and re-dying, that we will just be a great resource for all other beings who don't know that. And that's because we will have wisdom, because the way to align with that life force is to know that life force. And the ultimate way to know something is to experience it fully, where you you could say you become it. You become one with it. You're carried away by it. And so that's the reason for the slogan that I have. When people have asked me over the last 60 years, what is Buddhism? And what I finally like to say is, well, Buddhism is engaged realism, meaning the exploration and discovery of what is really real about themselves and about others. And that's an educational process. It isn't like snap, I can just believe some slogan. For example, Buddha said, well, I can say reality is nirvana and freedom from suffering, but just repeating what I said is not going to get you to there. In one way, you already are there. That's what I've discovered. So you should be happy about that. But in order for you to experience being there, it takes an effort of education. And you have to be critical of ideas that you have about it that make you afraid and that are contradictory to that idea. And you have to cultivate methods of experience and deepen your ability to experience, heighten your sensitivity to experience, so you can actually know it fully. And then you will be free of suffering. like I am, he said. And it's really great. And that was his discovery, So now he did say that if you don't know the situation, you can and definitely will suffer. And the basic it's not really a failure to know, like you couldn't count all the fish in the ocean or something. Of course we can't, but it's a wrong knowing. And for example, as an unenlightened person, I think I know at a visceral level that I'm the center of my existence. And I'm the one thing I can't doubt, that I'm here. Remember Descartes? I think, therefore I am, and that's where he landed. And that actually is a mistake, according to the discovery by the Buddha, because every other person is equally here as I am, and they're equally real as me. And I'm therefore not the most real, that I can doubt them more easily because they seem to be separated from me. And I feel I can't doubt myself because I'm talking to myself. But actually, of course, I can. And we do have the ability as we grow up to challenge some thought that we might have, like, oh, I hate that person, or oh, I really like this thing, I'm going to eat a barrel of it. And we have the ability to say, no, I'm not going to listen to that impulse because it's incorrect. We can do that. So we learn how to be critical and be able to correct ourselves and improve our way of dealing with things. And so the ultimate thing we can do is we can discover that we are interconnected with everyone. In one level, we're the same as them, as part of the life force. On another level, we're responsibly different, but we're not absolutely different. I'm not the absolute center. So we undo that exaggeration, and we get to fit in with the world in a really gentle and loving and positive way. And we'll get good feedback from the world when we do that. So we will discover that. So it's a kind of re-education of getting out of this kind of ignorance, which is the opposite of bliss, which brings on the suffering. Because if I think I'm the only real thing on some level, then everything else is opposed to me and is absolutely different from me. And I'm overwhelmed by it all, of course, inevitably. Now and then I can feel in control, secure here and there. But in the long run, sickness, old age, death, these things that I fear will overwhelm me, So that's sort of the nutshell of it. And therefore wisdom is bliss, because wisdom is encountering the reality of things. And when we do that, we align with the life force, and we feel infinitely alive and very happy about it. They say, and I'm almost there in the way I feel. It might take me 10 more lifetimes, but to me, that seems to be almost there. So that makes me happy.
Getting back to that word ignorance, many people think of that as a lack of education, but if you look at the root of the word ignore, it really means not paying attention. Is that the plight of much of humanity, that we're really not paying attention?
Yes, we're distracted from our own deepest common sense, our deepest intuition, you could say. We tend to be distracted, some of us more than others. And, like women, there's the expression women's intuition, female intuition. And I think females generally are more aware of that deeper intuition. And therefore, it's a good expression, actually. And we men have to learn more about it, because we tend to have more of a sense of being disconnected from things. That's the tendency of our gender. And but the word ignorance, it's a little bit of a mistranslation of the word avidya in Sanskrit. There's a word in the English dictionary called misknowledge. Like we have misunderstanding, we have misperception, we have miscomprehension. We use mis that way as a negation, and we don't use it with the word knowledge, although it's in the dictionary. So misknowledge means to know something that is incorrect, but think you know it. And that's really the kind of ignorance that is the most destructive. The just failing to know is also a problem in many contexts, but it's not quite as active as when you think you know, like everyone, I'm the greatest, some narcissist person, for example, of which we unfortunately have all experienced recently quite frequently. A very narcissistic person, they always saying and they always telling themselves, I am the greatest, I'm the best. There's nobody like me. And of course, nobody else really agrees with such a person. And so they're actually very frustrated. And that's an example of a misknowledge. They, of course, exist, and they're there, and they have their good points and bad points, but they're not the greatest. Everyone is the greatest, actually. And if they knew that and were less exaggerated, they'd be much more happy. And they wouldn't cause everyone else to disagree with them. Because we all do. It's somewhere. Everyone has that kernel of that in their wiring. We're kind of brought up. Everyone's out for number one. We have those kind of expressions where even some people even tell us that's a good way to be, and actually it's a very devastating and destructive way to be, because if you're out for number one, that means it's one versus an infinite number of others, and the one will never overcome them all. Even you get to be president, you get to be king. Actually, from Buddhist point of view, even you get to be a god. There'll still be other gods who will bother you, who will be stronger than you, or more beautiful, or more long-lived, or whatever, So that's the thing.
My guest is Robert Thurman. His book is Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly, fun facts, I love the alliteration, that can change your life. Bob, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you.
Yeah, sure. Well, the book is published by Hay House. And of course, everything in the world is on Amazon, but there are many other sources. Barnes and Noble, Hay House, your local bookstore, etc. The Hay House is the wonderful publisher who used to publish Wayne Dyer, the wonderful Wayne Dyer, who was a great inspiration for me. And although I didn't even believe him when he first said, "I'm okay, you're okay," I didn't think I was okay, and I'm still not completely able to believe him because I still have self-doubt, and I get into those things. But I really understand he's right. We are all okay, and you're also all okay. So that's why I love Hay House and chose to publish with them. And Hay House International, HHI. And you can find it on their website and in your local bookstore. And it has an ebook on Amazon, and there's an Audible. I also already recorded it, where I read it so you can jog and run and listen to it. And it talks about it's the curriculum of the education process of how to cheer yourself up and stay cheered up, and how to help others be cheered up by being cheered up yourself compassionately. And so it's a book you can work with and live with and listen to as you run or do yoga or whatever, ride on the bus. You can listen to it on your iPhone. My website is Bob Thurman, www.bobthurman.com, and that will link you directly to the Hay House. And also, by the way, I'm going on Substack, and I'm going to have a newsletter that will be elaborating the ideas in the book, which will be called Blue Sky Common Sense. And it will also deal with that on the social, political level, but not necessarily partisan, what in American politics, world politics, because in my 80s, I'm a grandfather and actually even a great-grandfather, and I feel really bad about leaving the planet, whenever it will happen, in such a mess for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and everybody else's grandchildren and great-children. And Greta Thunberg just went straight into my heart. And I really feel strongly about the climate situation. And we just have to stop thinking we can't do anything about it and listening to people who tell us we can't do anything about it. And then we will be able to do whatever we need to do about it. Because we're really clever people, and we can definitely get along without a little bit of this, and we can use a little bit of that instead. We'll make it.
And we'll be back with more of Bob Thurman after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Robert Thurman. His book is called Wisdom is Bliss. Bob, in the first segment, you said that many people think of Buddhism as a religion, but you share that Buddhism is realism and not a religion. Please explain.
Okay, I will. But Victor, before I completely explain, can I just ask you one question? And I love your name of your show of OMTimes, and I know you have a publication as well. And why did you choose that? Could you just quickly tell me? Your listeners may already know, but I don't.
OMTimes magazine was first published in 2009, founded by Chris and Liani Buck. I had the pleasure of meeting them at a wedding that I co-officiated in 2016. And in the course of conversation with them, they invited me to join their organization, OMTimes Media, OMTimes Radio, and launch my podcast, Destination Unlimited. And I'm grateful to them for giving me the opportunity to share my programs with their conscious audience. So thank you, Chris and Liani.
I see. Oh, Destination Unlimited. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I do love that, and I love OMTimes. And it makes me think that that Om for the Buddhist meditators is composed of the short vowel A and the short vowel U, because A plus U equals O. And then the is the closing, like an embrace of the two lips, and the closing of the breath. So Om, like that. And the A means the body of all Buddhas. The U means the speech of all enlightened beings and divine enlightened beings. And the means the mind of all enlightened beings and their unity with everyone. So one of the things about the Buddha's vision of the universe as really nirvana, its real reality being nirvana, is that when you become a Buddha, you become that, or you become aware that you are that. And you are that unlimitedly, and you feel united with all other enlightened and unenlightened beings. So you feel yourself as the same. So what that means is that infinite numbers of enlightened beings from all past life who are like gods and like humans, but they're sort of infinite. So they're not just a god as opposed to a human. They're like gods and humans. And all of them feel themselves that they are one with you. So you feel you're sort of made of them. Actually, you're not alienated from them. The reality is nothing alien. You are one with the highest way of life, the life force, the love force, the wisdom force in the universe. And so Om, therefore, when they say Om, they're reminding themselves that they are one with all good things, which is kind of fun, even if they're not feeling that good at the moment, in the sense that it's like, if I sort of had to let go of everything, I'd be cool. And if you think about it, everybody has that feeling. Everybody, even their whatever. And you know why we know that? Because everybody falls asleep, which means that even the most paranoid person, or one who suffers a great deal due to bad social circumstances or injustices or physical damage, harm, and so on, whatever it is, they love to surrender their consciousness in a nice, safe place, of course, with a pillow, or with a nice pillow on a bed, hopefully with a blankie, or even if in a camping thing with a sleeping bag or a blankie of some kind, and not in a dangerous place. It's ideally, but even in a difficult, stressful place, they will eventually fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, of course, you're completely vulnerable. You're wide open to the universe. And yet, we normally do, after 16 hours of being wide awake and we feel tired, and we're happy to surrender, sort of holding ourselves apart from the universe. We let go, and then amazingly, we wake up after a while, although sometimes it doesn't seem long enough if we're tired, and we feel better. We are renewed, meaning that the subliminal message comes to us that somehow when our boundaries were completely open, some energy came to us from somewhere that renewed our cells, that made us feel better and happier and more cheery. And we were ready to face something that we weren't ready to face when we were really tired last night. And this has happened to us thousands of times in a normal lifespan, even if we're living in hardship circumstances. And by the fact that we dare to fall asleep and to let go of our consciousness, proves that somewhere deep in us is a sense of trust of that universe. And there's a knowing that we will not be united, we're not going to burn to death or blow up or never wake up again. Maybe if we get really old like me, or we're really sick, or we're in some very dangerous situation, we might stay up for several days even without falling asleep because we're too scared. That can happen. But I think you cannot, if you don't sleep for 17 days or something, you actually will die. I believe there's some line for there's a certain disease some people have. I knew one French painter, very sensitive guy, Edilbert Vacheron was his name. He was quite a good painter, but he didn't become super famous. And he told me once that he went to all kinds of things, and there were ambulances and people giving electric shocks and all that thing, trying to make him go to sleep. And finally they succeeded after about 14 days or 12 days or something, but they were afraid he would die because he had some nervous thing where he couldn't sleep. So I don't know the science of it, but I know that. So but anyway, if we analyze the reality of our waking and sleeping cycle that we all live in, we realize we trust the world because we do let ourselves fall asleep. And if we don't fall asleep because we're so feeling nervous, we'll take an Ambien or something, and then we'll fall asleep, if you follow me. So there is this kind of trust. And of course, the people who believe in God as a monotheistic creator, especially if they haven't been too mean to people, or they know Jesus or some intercessor in some other religion, like Krishna, if they're Vishnu people in India, they when they die, they kind of trust that they'll be embraced by some angels or the divine, And nihilists, materialists, they feel so sure that nothing is the final condition. They feel at least they'll be anesthetized. They don't fear dying in that way, at least mentally, Their ideas like that. But all of it is really based not on a theory, it's based on the experience of having slept, fallen asleep thousands of times, and woken up feeling better. And we all have that. So it's a matter, so that's why I say realism. That's a kind of insight we will have of a kind of deep inner soul trust, let's say, subtle mind trust of the world, is the fact that we're capable of sleep. And even we find it nice, we like it, and we come back happier for it. And it's just a very simple thing. And it should cheer us up if we think about it, as long as we're not too tired to have to think about it.
In Wisdom is Bliss, you say that Buddha gave us a curriculum, a path of learning for anyone, even for those who are skeptical of spiritual paths. What is that path?
Well, I just gave an example. I analyzed the fact that I like to sleep, and everyone does, and we have to actually, and now and then, and that the fact that I can proves that somewhere in my soul I have a trust of the universe, and everyone has that. So that's the first step. There's called an Eightfold Path. The 4 friendly fun facts. They're called friendly facts because they are facts of someone who is your friend. And when they become facts to you, you'll be friends of other people. Because why? It means you will have become less self-involved and more altruistic because you have developed a certain amount of wisdom that means that you know that the other is sort of there and they're equal to you in some way. There's a sense of equality. You can read the Declaration of Independence. All humans are, as I would put it, they've said all men, but I would say all humans are equal. And that's sort of the wonderful thread of hope and optimism that flows in our country, is that is in our founding document. But that's one thing to be in a founding document. It's another thing to feel I'm equal to you. And you are as equal, as alive, as important. Your heartbeat is as important as my heartbeat. And when I escape from excessive self-involvement and self-preoccupation to really be more empathetic about you as being there, equally alive as me, within your perspective being also equal to mine from your direction, then I'm actually friendly to you because I see things a little bit how you see them. And there are degrees, of course, of that, but the greatest friend is one who really loves you and they really can empathize with you and they really were concerned for your happiness as equal. That doesn't mean they want to be unhappy themselves, but it means at least equally they are preoccupied with your happiness as theirs, and that's a real definition of friend. So that's why I call them friendly facts. The traditional way of calling them is noble facts or noble truth. And noble was a way that the Buddha reevaluated the idea of some sort of superior way of being, which from the social idea of sort of a social class, noble class. But he redefined it as meaning noble actually means you have noblesse oblige, you care for the other. And that's what noble should mean. It doesn't just mean you were born some sort of a brat in a palace or something.
And in Wisdom is Bliss, you compare those four noble truths to a medical diagnosis.
That's right. So the first one is if you remain self-obsessed and misknowing, you will be frustrated all the time. You will suffer. And he never said like Socrates. Remember, Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. Buddha never said that. He said it's worth living anyway, even if you're unenlightened. But it will be frustrating if you're unenlightened, because unenlightened means you're deceiving yourself about your degree of your self-importance. You are important, but you're not more important than other people are, and they think they are. So you're equally important as they are, is rather. And so that's the first one. So that's just once he discovered you can be free and really happy and really wise and know how to be happy. Once he discovered that, he said, well, if you insist on not knowing, you will be frustrated and unhappy. Then he said, what's the cause of it? What I just explained. Second fun fact is, well, luckily it has a cause. And the cause is not that impossible to interfere with and to interrupt and to disrupt. And the cause is a sense of excessive self-involvement, self-closure, self-obsession, self-preoccupation, whatever you want to call it, selfishness, excessive, exaggerated. As my old teacher used to say, my old karate kid, Mongolian teacher, used to say who I met when I was 20, and I was a brat, and he said, it's not wrong to think you're real. Everyone is real, and when people think they're real, that's correct. But when people think they're really real, then that's a problem. Exaggeration. And he said that because people sometimes think wrongly that Buddhism wants you to think you don't exist and then you're good. And that's not true. Of course you exist and you're important, but you're just not that much more important than other people or even other animals, even for that matter. But as a human, you have a better opportunity than them, on the other hand, because you have more self-reflective ability. You can understand things. You can recite Om. Or crocodiles usually don't recite Om. They just open their jaws and clomp onto the zebra at the waterhole, right? But you humans can say Om, and really think of what it means and enjoy it, So anyway, that's it. So that's the second fun fact is the cause, like a medical diagnosis. First is the symptom. Second is the diagnosis of the cause. Third is the prognosis. In other words, can you be cured of this suffering? Yes. And not only can you be, but your own reality is a freedom from suffering. Your nerves, your cells, the microbiome, your carbohydrates, whatever, all the creatures in your being that constitute your body, all the single-celled animals and your cells, they're all liking each other. So your body's hanging together because the different cells like each other. And they're happy, to be part of you. They're all happy to be part of you, unless you poison them with too much, whatever it might be. And so that's the nirvana, the freedom that he discovered from suffering. And that is everybody's birthright. And the humans have the best opportunity to achieve it, actually better even than angels or deities, who are superficially more happy with less stress in their heavenly abodes, but they therefore tend to be more complacent, and they don't make an effort to really know the situation. They tend to not do that. So a human is an ideal life to have, very valuable. So then the fourth one is the therapy, and that's the Eightfold Path. And the beginning of the Eightfold Path is what's called the realistic worldview, or realistic attitude, or realistic belief, or realistic view. And what that is really to be open-minded. and to be aware, and also to accept causation, to realize that you are a causal part of the causal process. You are interconnected with everything, and to then begin to work to ameliorate your interconnection. And the key one is to get rid of that delusion of being a separate entity, an absolutely separate. Relatively separate is okay, temporarily, but responsible actually. But absolutely separate is psychotic actually, and that has to be cured.
And we're going to touch upon those in our next segment because we have to take a quick break. My guest is Robert Thurman. We're discussing his book, Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly fun facts that can change your life. We'll be back with more of Bob after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Our country feels divided, but there's a place where people with different political views and life experiences are coming together through the power of conversation, and it feels good. Hear more at lovehasnolabels.com/one small step. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Robert Thurman. We're talking about his book, Wisdom is Bliss. In the last segment, you compared the 4 noble truths to a medical diagnosis. You started talking about the Eightfold Path, and you refer to this as a triple super education. Please explain.
Right. Well, the Eightfold Path is one way of dividing the therapy, which is a way of living while re-educating yourself in life, and sometimes they divide the 8 branches of the path, or the 8 lanes of the path, let's call it, where eventually you go on all 8 of them as you expand your being. And they also divide it into 3 super educations, adishiksha, and which people often translate as trainings, which I don't like, because I think that's trainings is what you have to do with your doggy, or with toilet training or military training, and education rather is what brings out your own inner wisdom and your own inner abilities, and that's more like it. And I think there's a reason why people tend to translate it as training, but which I won't go into in this short time. But I'll just say this is bringing out your own knowledge. It isn't sort of just training you to adopt something you're indoctrinated in. So the three super educations are super education in ethics, or in justice, or in ethicality, or morality, whatever you want to call it, how you actually interact with the world and with others and with society. So that's a super education in that. Then there's a super education in mind, meaning developing sort of skills, and this relates to meditation and contemplation and heightening your powers of memory, memorizing things, concentrating on things, keeping your mind focused on what you want to do. And then finally, and analyzing things and being more penetrating in your analysis. And then the third one is the most important one, is the super higher education in wisdom, which doesn't just mean resign yourself to the passing of the seasons or something. It means understanding completely the nature of reality, the reality of yourself, your psychic reality, as well as physical reality, and completely understanding the process of life and death yourself, so that you can maneuver your way through the infinite passages, the unlimited. We're in destination unlimited, I like that, in the unlimited and infinite passages of the life and death process, the multi-life process, we would say, which we already have been doing, but we have forgotten our previous ones, most of us, because we suffered in them, and we didn't get enlightened yet, quite, but we were enlightened enough to be human, which is very complicated and difficult to do from other lesser types of embodiments, but we did. And now we're very close to becoming really fully alive, which is enlightened, and fully human, and fully, in love with self and other, which is what it is. So falling in love with the universe, let's say, including yourself as part of it. All right? Truly, that's what it is. So anyway, the Eightfold Path I started with, the first one is called Realistic Worldview. And the second one is Realistic Purpose. And I've just learned from Victor wonderfully about the wonderful multi-faith new seminary founded by a Hindu and a Jewish rabbi and a Hindu master, Hindu Swami, but including all world faiths and religions, and hopefully also secular humanism. The Dalai Lama always wants to include them as another faith, rather than think of them as somehow not spiritual. And anyway, I just learned that the 11th commandment, the rabbi used to say, one of the founders, was the commandment, thou shalt have a purpose, which I really, that purpose-driven life, there's a famous other book like that by another guy I know, preacher. But anyway, yes, the second one is realistic purpose. And of course, when you have realistic worldview, which is openness to causation, openness to your evolutionary long infinite past and infinite future destiny, which is unlimited, when you really could see that as a reality, then you have to develop a purpose of how to navigate that. And your purpose is to be fully aware of what you're doing and where you're going and where you came from and what you are and what other beings are and what other people are. And then when you are fully aware, you'll do it fully happily and lovingly and effectively. So those two connected together are the super education in wisdom. And then the next three are called the super education in ethicality or justice or morality, whatever you want to call it. And the first one of those is realistic speech and a realistic relationship to language. And this is very, very interesting and important that speech would come right after it, because we normally don't realize that speech is such a powerful way of acting. And when we listen to others also, we accept their thoughts in our mind. And also when even others in history, or even read the Bible or the Buddhist Sutra or the Hindu Purana or like the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, we are accepting Krishna in the mind through language. And when we tell other people things, they are privileging us to be accepted in their mind, at least listen to what we say. And so speech is a real important vehicle of our interconnection with others in history and in life. And therefore we should be very careful about our own speech, always make it gentle and always make it intelligible and always make it kind and always make it generous and diplomatic and peace creating and so forth. I mean, I don't want to go into too detail, but speech, and that's also how we get educated, is by speech. And so we should be very cautious what we read, what we study, read it very carefully, critically, understand it well, and so on. So realistic speech, then that's part of the ethicality. And then the next one is realistic ethics in itself, which is to realize that doing good is actually beneficial for everyone, not only others, but ourselves as well. So we have a biological or evolutionary motive in being good, with body, speech, and mind. So that even our thoughts become good, because they also are powerful action. Thoughts are not just private, that they don't connect to others. They create a vibration that goes to others, and they send themselves out to the world through our actions, and they determine our action and our speech. So they're really critical. So they're part of ethics, actually, is the thoughts. But the primary thing in realistic ethics is body and speech initially. And then next to that one is the realistic livelihood. So once we have that purpose, and then we learn the power of speech, and then we and use it effectively, and then we learn how to manage our body, speech, and mind in an evolutionarily positive way for both self and others. Then we get into livelihood, which is the way we act in society, and then we don't want to have livelihoods that are harmful to others. We don't want to kill people or other beings, etc., etc. We want to be kind and just and helpful and life-producing and creative and so forth. So anyway, that's the realistic livelihood, and then that's the end of the realistic super education in ethics. And then there's one that is part of all three of the super education. It's called realistic. I call it creativity. Some people call it effort, enterprise, industry, diligence, energy even, but I like to call it creativity because it's a particular joyful type of effort toward the good. And that realistic is really important. That fuels all three of the higher education. And then the final two, one of the second to last, seventh one, is realistic mindfulness, which is self-awareness, introspection, looking into how your own mind works, finding freedom to choose between different impulses in your mind, not being a hot-button reactive person, but learning to be reflective, how you react, noticing what is in your mind, finding negative things there and disempowering them, reinforcing the positive things you find, and so on. Realistic mindfulness. And then that leads to realistic concentration or samadhi, which is actually where you develop a higher mental power, because you can really focus on whatever you want. If you want to be good, you can really focus on the good. If you want to eliminate the bad, you can really focus on that. And that's meditation. But it's not just meditation undirected by realistic worldview, realistic ethic, realistic mindfulness. It's meditation on top of all of those things, bringing them to a higher power. And that's the realistic education in mind. So we have realistic education in super education in ethics, mind, and wisdom, which is in science, in reality. And with those educations there, which include spiritual education and in spiritual concentration and spiritual ethics, as well as practical physical behavior and everything. So it's really a comprehensive education system, and it's guaranteed to produce freedom from suffering. And whatever degree that we do, of course, graduation, right? We don't take every course in the college in one life. We specialize in certain things often. Ultimately, we'll become a polymath, as they say, and learn everything. And that's when you become a Buddha.
And I love the word you coined for this. You call it a Buddhism. I guess that's something that can't be faked.
Buddhism, that's right. Well, I wanted to show that I wasn't just selling Buddhism, because I follow Dalai Lama, that everyone, and that's why I love what Victor told me in the intermission. He told me about an interfaith thing established by a rabbi and a Hindu Swami, Satchidananda and Rabbi
Gelberman, yes.
Gelberman, and that it still exists, and it's a wonderful thing, and I want to join it, because I follow on the Dalai Lama's thing, where of the three aims of life he has. And first aim is to promote transcendental common human values, including secular values, just as a human being. And as a Buddhist monk, he wants to promote complete cooperative interaction between world religions. He doesn't mean to make it one religion in the world. He thinks there are good varieties, and he often says, who would want to have all the restaurants in the world serve only one dish? He says, the variety is the spice of life, and different people and different cultures have their different religious, cultural matrices that they grow up in, that they inherit, and they can find the good in the heart of all of them. the good because it's reality. And it's the good in the heart of science because science seeks to understand reality. And so he has that kind of faith, but they do it coming from the different places. And so there's a vast variety, and he loves that, and he thinks that's good. And as long as it's aiming at the good. I mean, a religion of hatred, he wouldn't actually go for that, unless it was hatred of hatred, which means love.
And love is what it's all about. My guest, Robert Thurman, his book, Wisdom is Bliss, 4 friendly fun facts that can change your life. Bob, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can find your book and give us your website.
Wisdom is Bliss is the name of the book, and the subtitle is 4 friendly fun facts that can change your life. And it's published by Hay House International. And you can find out more about it from my website, bobthurman.com. And you can also find my free newsletter on substack.com. Eventually, I meant to launch them all on my birthday yesterday, but the Substack will not be launched until my father's birthday on August 8th, my late father's birthday on August 8th. And but the book is launched on my birthday. So nice of the editors and the publishers of Hay House. They decided to launch Wisdom is Bliss. And a secret subtitle of it is Enlightened Beings Have More Fun.
Obviously, from what you've shared with us, your amazing book, your books, your life work, and your divine sense of humor. Bob Thurman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Victor. My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.